Mr. Lubinda, thank you so much for joining me on this edition of This Day. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me.
A few years ago, 2021 to be specific, around this time, your position and that of your party, the Patriotic Front, was very clear. There was no dispute on who is the president, who is the vice president, who is the chairman, who is the chairman for the youth. It's very clear. The picture is completely different today because there's so many people claiming to be the leadership of the Patriotic Front. As somebody that has been a part of this party for such a long time, and you have been in the leadership of the PF, what comes to mind when you see what is going on with your Patriotic Front today, that even filing in a candidate in a by-election results in a contest within people who feel they are members of the Patriotic Front?
What comes to mind is that it is interesting how some people lose loyalty to friends when their friends are not capable of providing that which they were getting from them hitherto. That's what comes to mind. I say this because, like you rightly said, this time in 2021, Edgar Chagwa Lungu was firmly in control of the Patriotic Front, and he was firmly in control of the presidency as the Republican president. And obviously the party was attractive because people could receive appointments and people felt happy to be associated with the ruling party. But with time, after 2021 elections, Edgar Chagwa Lungu lost elections. The PF lost elections. We lost the authority to superintend over the affairs of the country and became an opposition political party. We obviously lost the attraction that we had before the elections of 2021. And I suppose this is what created some disquiet in some people, to a point where they felt this should just be broken down. And you will recall, like many of your viewers will recall, that everything came to the hilt on the 24th of October 2023. Fortunately, it did not happen in October 2021, nor did it happen in October 2022. It took 2 years for it to happen. What this also shows is that much as there is always some amount of destabilization in a political party when it loses power, or in any organization when it loses its head, at least for us, it took 2 years before we could see that there were cracks that were about to occur in the party. And again, your viewers will remember the circumstances surrounding the 24th of October 2023 event. It was not devoid of external pressure, external influences and participation of people who had nothing to do with the running of the Patriotic Front, people who had nothing to do with the membership of the Patriotic Front. So yes, this is the reflection that I have, and it teaches me one very important lesson, that not everyone who says they are loyal to you or loyal to a cause are loyal because of you or loyal because of the cause. Some could be loyal because of the benefit they derive from that loyalty. And once that benefit which they are deriving is no longer there, the loyalty is put to a very big test. And for some people, it wanes and they show their true colors.
The Patriotic Front, when President Michael Sata won elections in 2011, I remember that you were Minister of Tourism. They first appointed you that, and I vividly remember at his press briefing, he actually cracked a joke about you being a tourist attraction and why he was making you tourism minister. But only a few years later, he was no more. And today, the Patriotic Front is where it is. Do you think that one of the fundamental problems that the PAF is dealing with today is a lack of a succession plan. I know that no single president of a political party must anoint who must take over, but must prepare people to lead the party. Do you think this is a crisis that the Patriotic Front is going through now? A leadership crisis and a lack of a succession plan?
Just for the sake of the record, I was not made Minister of Tourism. I was made Minister of Information, Broadcasting and Tourism. So in effect, I was running two ministries because there were two permanent secretaries. Now, talking about a succession plan, I have to state that the Patriotic Front, like many political parties across the globe, do not have a clear succession plan. There are very few parties that have managed to do that, and one of them is Chama cha Mapinduzi in Tanzania, and kudos to them. But you also realize that that succession plan that they had has come to an end. Now they also don't have a clear succession plan. And the reason for this is because of the dynamism of politics. You cannot possibly have a succession plan as though this is a family thing, where you are certain that after this person, it will be the next will be this one. This is the reason why political parties find it difficult to have a succession plan. You elect a person at the point when there is need for replacement. So to say that this is what has caused the problem that is in the PF is stretching it a bit too far, because you also ought to recall that after the demise of His Excellency President Michael Chilufya-Sata, there was no big problem. There was a small period when a lot of us were vying for the presidency. Remember that I was one of those who put in a bid to be elected president of the Patriotic Front. There were a number of us, I think there were about 11 or 12 of us. But after we crossed that bridge and Edgar Chagwa Lungu had been elected president, everything simmered down and Edgar Chagwa Lungu led the party in unison until 2023. He retired from politics soon after elections of 2021. He stayed back. He asked me to run the party and I acted in that position 2021 up to December, the whole year 2022 until October 2023. So it had nothing to do whatsoever with having or not having a succession plan. Edgar Lungu took over from President Michael Sata and he ran the party very well, successfully so, for 7 years. I took over, I ran the party as acting president for 3 years, 2021, 22 and 23, until October 2023 when what happened. But even beyond that, up to now, 2025, the party is still intact. We may have squabbles here and here. We may hear people who are claiming they are president of this and president of that. But the truth of the matter is that there is only one Patriotic Front. And that is the Patriotic Front for which I am vice president. And I'm glad that in your intro, you introduced me as vice president of the Patriotic Front.
There's probably someone arguing somewhere about that because it is subject to argument. And I know, and I believe that you acknowledge that. But when we talk about the succession plan, I completely agree that it cannot be said that this person is going to take over. But part of that succession plan is ensuring that someone takes over when there is a need. If there's a president acting for 3 years, there's an evident need. So why did you, as a political party, especially you as acting president and vice president of the Patriotic Front, then fail to lead the party to have a substantive president take over? Because that's perhaps what resulted in what has happened today, that swift action was not taken. And if you would like, somebody took advantage of the situation and proceeded to have their presidency of the Patriotic Front.
Yeah. Some will argue in the manner that you're doing, but members of the Central Committee of the Patriotic Front are alive to the fact that we had drawn a roadmap leading us to what we wanted to hold, the Extraordinary General Conference. As a run-up to that, some people declared interest to contest, and the Central Committee allowed them. They said, let those who want to contest express interest. And in expressing interest, let them pay a non-refundable fee of 200,000 kwacha, so that we know the people who are intending to contest the elections. And because we're a financially cripped political party, we didn't have the finances. We were using that money as a stepping stone to raising more resources for us to hold an extraordinary general conference. What your viewers ought to know is that the constitution of the Patriotic Front requires that there are no less than 5,000 delegates for you to convene a general conference. And that calls for a lot of money. So in the process of raising money towards the general conference, then the 24th of October 2023 issue arose. So it is not that we didn't have the desire. It is that it was part of the plan, but it was interfered with when one person decided to be used on the 24th of October 2023. And when I say to be used, it is because, as every person, every discerning Zambian will realize, what was held at the Mulungushi International Conference Center on that day was beyond the capacity of the people who claimed to have convened that meeting. Those people who gathered there did not have the capacity whatsoever to hold an opposition political party convention on Independence Day, when the state was playing host to a foreign president, on a day when the country was celebrating its 60th independence anniversary, and to be held...
It's 59.
Fine. And to be held, for that matter, at the Mulungushi International Conference Center. Over and above that, those people did not have the capacity to marshal outside broadcasting services of Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation, and to be back to back with them covering the presidential state house function with a visiting foreign head of state. Those people did not have the capacity to marshal the police in the numbers that they did, to go and give them protection, to actually assist them in holding the convention. They didn't have that capacity. So you have to ask, who then did that? As far as I'm concerned, and as far as many of my colleagues in the PF are concerned, that was state-sponsored. And the people who were there were simply asked to be there, to be stooges, to be used. For what, to what end? With the aim of destroying the Patriotic Front. This is the reason why you will recall that that same night, fingerprints of people who claim to have been elected were lifted by the police. Ever since when have you seen the police lifting fingerprints, or even of criminals, during the night? It is never done. But on this particular day, in a very peculiar circumstance, they lifted fingerprints, and soon after that they were forcing the Registrar of Societies to change the office bearer's record at the registrar's office.
Unfortunately, as much as you will belabor this point, and I've heard you say it before, I've heard several members of your side of the Patriotic Front say this several times, as far as facts are concerned, this can only be advanced as your analysis and your assessment and your opinion. But another angle to this could be that you advance this argument to evade accountability for letting the Patriotic Front slip out of your hands when you were in charge, when you could have held a grip on it, and this conversation wouldn't be happening today.
You make me laugh. Well, what are you considering as facts if what I'm telling you are not facts? What are you considering as facts?
Absolutely.
Tell me, wait a minute. You tell me how you would have expected me, opposition president, to go and stop a meeting that is being convened by the state, with state protection, with all those police officers there, with all armed vehicles there. How did you expect me to stop it?
Not to stop it,
but
to make sure that it doesn't start altogether. Because
but
the people that convene,
wait a minute.
The people that
you want
convened,
me to account, and I want you to make sure that you allow me to account for what I'm accountable for. Can you tell me how we could have prevented it when we didn't even know that this was being planned?
And that's what
we were working towards holding the extraordinary conference. Meanwhile, somebody is planning to hijack your party, how do you prevent it?
He argues, Miles
No, I'm
Sampa,
asking
that
you,
is.
how are we to prevent it?
I'm advancing towards that. He argues that the reason why this happened was that you took so long and you didn't provide them a tangible
I have
roadmap on
explained
when
to you
this was going
that
to
we
happen.
had a roadmap and we were raising money towards that conference.
And you were
Tell me how else we could have avoided it. We were raising money towards holding the extraordinary conference. And you wanted us to hold the conference without raising the money?
It's not about what I want.
No,
it's
no,
about
but
the people.
it's you who's saying we let it slip. Now I'm asking you, we were following a roadmap.
Which
right?
roadmap?
And we were raising money towards that extraordinary conference. While we're raising money to hold the conference, there's a coup, and you say you should have prevented it. How else could we have prevented it besides what we were doing?
Which is exactly the questions I'm asking you. That
And now I'm asking you because you're saying we didn't prevent it. Tell me how you, in your mind, think we could have prevented it.
Well, it's not my burden, but I'll ask the questions based
I've
on...
explained to you, and if you are honest, I've told you there was no other thing we could have done. We had a roadmap agreed upon by all members of the Central Committee. Let us have the extraordinary conference and let's raise money towards
When were you
it.
going to have the extraordinary
Wait
conference?
a minute. We were raising money to hold the extraordinary conference.
When were you going to have it?
And we were supposed to have held a constitutional conference in November of 2023. All right? And in October, 24th October 2023, there's a coup. How could we have prevented it?
Do you acknowledge that you had set a date before that October 24, 2023 conference on which the extraordinary conference did not happen?
Yes.
Don't you think that this created the agitation?
No.
And the suspicion that
No.
it clearly did,
it
because some
shouldn't.
people went ahead and...
No, look, you're making it sound as though it is justified for people to come into a political party, interfere with its leadership because they've postponed their conference.
No,
that doesn't make sense.
I don't.
No.
I don't want to advance the
I want
argument.
to just tell you it does not make sense. You cannot say because you postponed the extraordinary conference, therefore you gave reason for people to be agitated, because the people who were used in that coup were actually members of the Central Committee and they were part and parcel of the decisions.
You don't think that they have the right to feel dissatisfied, that you've made a, because literally is a payment that you've made for this exercise to proceed and to go smoothly, but it doesn't happen. You don't think that these people have the right to feel frustrated in such a process?
Not if they are part and parcel of the decision. If they are part and parcel of the decision, no. I hope I've answered your question now. You cannot be part and parcel of a decision and say this decision has agitated me. No. If you're part and parcel of the management at Diamond TV and you make a decision together, you are bound collectively. You cannot afterwards go out and say, I am not part of that decision. That's being completely cheap. So whoever is advancing that question, ask them, were they part and parcel of the decision? And if the answer is yes, tell them to wake up, to let them mature. They cannot be part of a decision and afterwards say, I am agitated by that decision. No. No. And you must also understand that a political party is an organization. That organization has structures of leadership. The Patriotic Front Constitution gives power to the Central Committee to make decisions on behalf of every member of the party. And if the Central Committee makes a decision, every loyal member of the party must abide. And if they don't agree, there are grievance procedures in the Patriotic Front. And staging a coup is not amongst them. So don't come to me and try to justify an illegality. No, I will not allow that.
I will not be a part of the issues happening in the Patriotic
You are struggling
Front, but
to justify.
I will ask questions on behalf
I'm just
of people.
advising you that your viewers are seeing that you are justifying. You are struggling to justify. And now I'm explaining to you that there was no way of preventing that, because everybody in the Patriotic Front had agreed through their Central Committee that we have this roadmap. While we were pursuing that roadmap and meeting all the milestones, somebody decided to sell their soul to go and stage a coup. And you are saying you must be accountable because you postponed elections.
I'm asking questions.
No.
Well, that's all I do.
No,
and you may not like some of the questions I ask, but they're not a representation of me.
I like all the questions, except what I stop you from doing is to try and struggle to justify the unjustifiable. Ask me questions and let me answer, all right?
Which is what I'm doing.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
I think I've done a fair job in asking questions and for you to answer.
You have, sir, your viewers are watching you and me. And your viewers have seen how you have struggled to put blame on the party for an illegal action by others. Stop it.
I'm not justifying anything, and I think that needs to be very clear. I think that needs to be very clear. Sometimes
have I explained to you how things happened?
Yes, you have.
So, are you satisfied that there was no way of us preventing that?
We'll proceed to the next part of this interview.
Thank you. Thank you. At least that silence is important for me. Thank you. Let's proceed.
The next part of this interview is basically that you say here that you believe, well, you have assessed, you've made the assessment that there was no way for you to stop this because it was, according to you, state-sponsored, and the machinery was too much for you as the Patriotic Front as it is to fight it. But this is 2025. There's an election coming in 2026. And you insist that the Patriotic Front is intact. A political party that people have known since 2001 for a very long time, one that formed government in 2011. Is this the Patriotic Front that is going to contest next year? Or should people prepare themselves for a different version of the Patriotic Front, and you are leaving the Patriotic Front to those that have staged a coup, as you put it?
I'll go back to your statement about us failing to prevent, and I'll inform the nation through you that on that fateful evening, when we heard about that meeting, we actually sent our people there, all right, to go into that meeting, to go and ask the legitimacy of that meeting. At the entrance of Mulungushi International Conference Center, they were asked by the police, can you show us your accreditation? Okay? And of course, our people didn't have accreditation because the people who were there were handpicked. Now, the police stopped members of the Patriotic Front from entering Mulungushi International Conference Center to go and ask the legitimate questions about the legality of that gathering. All right? So, if this doesn't add up, I want to say to you that the state was involved. Coming to the question you asked, are we ready for 2026? Yes, we are.
As a PF?
We are ready as PF. And this is the reason why we have kept saying to you, and I've said to your television before, that the coup d'etat of 2023, unfortunately for the sponsors of that coup, what they managed to take is the official dome of PF, the registrar's records. That's what they managed to take. They failed lamentably to take the Patriotic Front. And the Patriotic Front is not the record at the Registrar of Societies office. The Patriotic Front are the members of the party. And to date, we have not heard any single branch in Zambia of the PF which has said we are no longer under Edgar Chagwalungu, we are under some coup arrangement. Not a single one. Yes, we have heard a few members of parliament. Yes. But tell me if you have heard any district chairman, let alone any provincial chairman, who has come up and said, we are denouncing the leadership of Edgar Chagwalungu because we are drifting. Not a single one. So, fine, they may keep the record at the registrar's office, but they have failed to touch the organization called Patriotic Front, and we are still intact. Now, when you ask me, PF, we said to you, I said myself, that look, There is no reason why we should continue to fight over this record. There's no value in it. Let them keep the record. They can even keep the name, as long as we keep the party. This is how we decided, look, we are now going to start fielding candidates. But because these fellows are keeping the record, and they have come up with new regulations which are not provided for in any law, that before a person is accepted to file in their nomination, they must have the name of the president and the name of the secretary general. We knew what they were playing to. We knew that they were playing to the fact that they had taken away the official record from us. And for 2 years, we were not participating in by-elections, and they were having a free reign. And we realized this is what they want. We decided we will not allow them, not in the interest of Zambia's multi-party democracy. We chose, therefore, that let's forget the name, but let's keep the people. Let us continue to take part in elections. And you saw the PF taking part in elections under the Tonse umbrella in Kawambwa, in Pambashe, and in Petauke. And we shall continue to do that. And if the appetite for keeping the official record from us continues until 2026, I can still assure you we will have a PF candidate standing for presidency in Zambia under the Tonse arrangement. That, no one can stop us.
You've talked about the structures of the Patriotic Front, but you surely do agree also that people that vote are not all members. People who vote, for example, for the UPND or the Patriotic Front are not all members of the UPND or the Patriotic Front. There's some members of the public that don't belong to any political party. And there's several issues that come into play when choosing a leader, and one of them is perception. Are you not worried that the perception that the Patriotic Front is going through problems, the Patriotic Front is in disarray, could affect your intended outcome of the forthcoming election?
I'm very happy to tell you and to tell the nation that ever since that fateful coup, 24th of October 2023, wherever we have gone, we haven't heard people being bothered about this. Actually, people are lamenting on behalf of those who were used to cause the coup. Members and non-members of the Patriotic Front are still solidly sympathetic of the Patriotic Front. All opposition political parties in Zambia, even those who are not friends of the Patriotic Front, are sympathetic of what happened to the Patriotic Front. So this issue about perception is one issue. And if the intention of those who caused the coup was to create that perception, please, let's use this television program to tell them they have failed, because the people out there know that the Patriotic Front is still strong. And are we not consolidated by the outcome of the results in Kawambwa, in Pambashe, and in Petauke? It shows that the people are still rallying behind the Patriotic Front. And especially now that the Patriotic Front has even managed to be embraced and to embrace others under the Tonse Alliance. We're very happy about that. Don't you tell me that the other members of the Tonse Alliance are themselves not concerned about the so-called perception about the PF. And had that been an issue, they wouldn't have wanted to be partners of the Patriotic Front. But because they realize that this is just a smoke screen which is being sponsored for a particular end, and yet the people out there are not seeing this thing. The people out there are seeing that there is an exterior hand which is trying to muzzle things in the Patriotic Front.
So
but they have failed.
How do we then reconcile this analysis by you as the Patriotic Front with what happened in Kawambwa and in Pambashe, where Tonse Alliance lost to the ruling party, giving them their first seats up north in the country?
I laugh because, you know, some colleagues of yours were asking me that we are celebrating the victory in Petauke. And I laughed and said, there is no way we can celebrate any victory of any election that is superintended over by cadres of a competing political party. We can't celebrate. There is nothing to celebrate. It is like taking a football team to go and compete against another, and the referee and the linesmen are all members of the opposing team, and you win and you celebrate. That's not winning. No. You win if the elections are free and fair. For as long as the elections are being managed by cadres of a particular political party which is competing in that election, it's not fair and it's not free.
How do you explain the victory then?
The outcome is not necessarily a reflection of the will of the people. In Petauke, the numbers you saw are just a fraction of the numbers you should have seen hadn't it been for Mwangala Zalomis and the cadres at ECZ. Had that ECZ been free and fair, the numbers would have been totally different, because we trounced UPND to the ground. Everywhere you go, and you as a journalist, you're very sensitive to the mood of people. You can tell, when you go out, you can tell the mood of the people. In Petauke, if there were people who were saying we're going to vote for UPND, wherever Tonse appeared, they would say, you know, Nindalama chabe, tikudia chabe ndalama isi. We cannot vote for this party. Yamene hata mangisa MP watu stizi wakutaenda kuti. People were singing there. No JJ, no vote. And then we go and see this small margin. And when my friends were celebrating, I told them, be careful. The only reason why we won is because the people of Petauke, the youths of Petauke, following the spirit of their former member of parliament and the spirit of their current member of parliament, two young dynamic people stood up and they said, Kuno Petauke, you will steal, but not to the extent that you are stealing elsewhere. That's how we survived Bwana. Hadn't it been for that, we would have also lost Petauke the same way we lost Pambashi, the same way we lost Kawambwa. You saw what happened in Kawambwa. Huh? In Kawambwa, our polling agents were being chased from polling stations. And when I talk about cadres, I'm even making a mistake, because even leaders of Tonse were chased from polling stations. You saw how Peter Chanda, president of NCP, president of the party on who we had a candidate, how he was being chased around. You saw how Sean Tembo was hacked in the presence of the police at a police station on the voting day. And you expect us to accept and say these are free and fair elections? No. I can repeat this. For as long as Hagainde Hijirema and the UPND keep cadres at ECZ, Zambia will never have free and fair elections. And I'll also use the term you used, perception. Remember that for any election to be free and fair, the people must accept it even before it happens. And the perception here is that Hagainde put his people there. For what purpose? To skew the table against the opposition.
It is important that you've used the word perception, because that qualifies the fact that government has dispelled these claims, but the Electoral Commission of Zambia also have said and tried to the extent to demonstrate that they are an autonomous body. But this drives me towards a different aspect of our interview today.
Let me ask a question.
I'm not going to answer any questions
but I would
today.
I'll ask so that the viewers can answer. You may not have to answer it. Let the viewers answer this question. How autonomous is the ECZ when they are not even amenable to the rulings of the court? And don't answer, let the viewers answer. How could this ECZ be considered to be a neutral arbiter of elections when they can go against a ruling of the court, when the court said these elections must not be held? And yet they say, to hell with the decision of the court, we're proceeding. If there is an institution of governance which is not amenable to the decision of the judiciary, then you should know that there is a breakdown of law and order.
Let's move on to another aspect of this interview, and I want us to talk about the economy. Just yesterday, the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection, JCTR, released the BNNB, which is the Basic Nutrition Needs Basket, which has indicated an increase of about 700 kwacha for a family of 5, and it's around 11,000 kwacha now that it costs, for a family to survive a month. What do you make of this as the Patriotic Front? And I would like to find out from you where things have gone wrong for the country and what to do to get out of it.
A number of very important issues, and thank you for raising this question. It is a more progressive question than talking about the coup. The coup occurred, and the party is still solid, it's moving on. But these are matters that affect the Zambian people on a daily basis. Number one, no country can survive only on personal tax, on pay as you earn. No. There's no country in the world that survives only on revenues from taxing its citizens from their incomes, from their salaries. Every economy survives on the extraction of resources. Zambia, as your viewers know, is one of the largest producers of copper, the 10th if I'm not mistaken. And yet, records are there to show we have now become the 6th poorest country in the world. Why is that? This is something that we in the Patriotic Front recognized soon after winning elections in 2011. You recall what President Michael Sata did. He said there is no way that you can continue to be extracting precious metals and you go and auction them in India. We'll be auctioning them in Zambia. Let those people who are interested in our minerals come and participate in the auction in Zambia, because the 3 days they stay in Zambia, they boost our tourism revenues. The 3 days they stay in Zambia, we can collect money from them. And when they buy, we know the value at which they have bought, so we can tax them properly. We also decided that we're going to introduce mineral royalty tax to continue with what Mwanawasa had done. Because we knew that the mining companies, all of them being foreign owned, would not be honest to us. They are in business to make money for themselves. None of them goes into business to make money for the government. No, they make money for themselves. And they'll find ways and means of ensuring that they evade paying you tax. The so-called forward pricing, for instance, is all a mechanism to make sure that they extract your copper here, send it as a raw mineral to another of their companies abroad, and that is where the profits are made. And you taxing here, nothing. We decided, let's ensure that there is mineral royalty tax. And we started to collect money, which money we were using to subsidize fuel, to subsidize electricity, to subsidize agriculture. What did these people do when they came into office? They decided that they would do away with mineral royalty tax. And I'm sure that if you bring somebody from government or from UPND, they'll come and say that what I'm saying is not true because they are collecting mineral royalty tax. But the truth of the matter, sir, is that they are collecting mineral royalty tax and they are making it tax deductible. Meaning you pay the mineral royalty tax, but when it comes for you to pay company tax or corporate tax, you deduct that which you paid as mineral royalty. If the corporate tax is 10 kwacha, but you paid 3 kwacha mineral royalty, you deduct the 3 kwacha from the corporate tax. That is making it free. Now, you heard recently, only 2 weeks ago, they decided to even suspend the 15% tax duty on the export of precious metals. How do you expect the economy to grow? The major earner of government revenue is pay as you earn. Now, can you imagine their argument is that with this 15% duty on precious metals, the market is too small and our local miners cannot sell. Now, What sense does it make for you to extract your emeralds, export them so that they are cheap outside the borders of Zambia, and yet there's no revenue coming into Zambia, and your argument is that this miner is employing 10 people?
Well, I don't think that the argument is that there's no revenue, and it's not accurate that there's no revenue coming into the country. There's several taxes that have to be paid nonetheless by these mining companies. But the rationale is that these, especially when we talk about the precious metals and the precious stones, there was a halt by these large precious stone mining companies in terms of them exporting, because they argued that this tax was making it extremely expensive for them to operate, for them to do business, and they had to seek government's indulgence to have a win-win situation, to save jobs, but also have some form of revenue, as opposed to these precious stones just sitting there at loggerheads trying to find a way forward.
I'm sure your viewers remember that there was a time when some mines, copper mines, were closed. One of them is the one that they are boasting about, that 6 presidents before them failed to open, and now they have opened it. Such mines were closed for one reason. The international price of copper was low, and they couldn't make profit. Okay? We did not say continue extracting the copper anyway. No, they said stop it. So if now the international price of the precious metals is so low that they don't want to pay tax, what benefit is it for Zambians for those minerals to be exported and there is no beneficiation to Zambia? We're better off leaving those minerals where they are until such a time that the demand for those precious metals increases and the international price increases, so that when you export them, the government of Zambia earns revenue on behalf of the Zambian people. It is the same, sir, as saying we have stacks of maize in our silos. Now, we're going to sell all this maize at lower than the cost of production, simply because we have them, because we have the maize. It doesn't make sense. But you sell your product at a time when it gives you the best benefit, the highest return. And the minerals will not go to waste. You can leave them in the ground. If the prices now are too low, leave them in the ground. The United States of America is not extracting its oil now. They are waiting for the reserves in Saudi Arabia, for the reserves in Middle East to dwindle, so that the prices of fuel increase. That's when they'll start extracting their oil. That is what real governors do. But you don't go and sell your product for a song just because you have it.
Isn't governance and leadership also multifaceted, putting into consideration the ramifications of such decisions, like people losing their jobs? Because it is not just the large corporates in the mining sector, it is also the artisanal miners that have been complaining. I mean, just last week I was having an interview and asking these questions you're asking to the Emeralds Association of Zambia, and they were saying that their members were opposed to this tax simply because of the cost of doing business. And it is not that they are not paying tax, they are just not for the idea of paying the 15% export tax.
Sir, you are saying to me that I would expect that the miners and the employees of those miners would agree with me that please don't export these minerals without paying tax to the Zambian people? No, they're the direct beneficiaries. They're the ones who are benefiting. But the question is, what are the numbers? How many people are affected by that decision compared to the population? Remember that the resource endowment that we have in this country is not only for the miners, it is for the whole country. If that resource endowment does not make it possible for people to have 3 square meals a day because they are losing tax, then forget it. Forget it. This is not as though this is a private resource. This is a national resource which should benefit every Zambian. You and I have an equal stake in those minerals, even if we don't live in the areas where those minerals are being mined. But even beyond that, the people in the area, in the vicinity of where the precious minerals are being mined, ask their lives. Are you sure that their lives are any better? That they have reduced mineral royalty, they have reduced mineral tax, duty on precious minerals? No. So you should look at these resources in the broader context. Yes, how many people are employed by the mines compared to the number of people who are employed in the agriculture sector? Why is it that you're not providing equal incentives to the agriculture sector as you're providing to the mining? Tell me how many people in Zambia are employed as real estate agents, employed as keepers of people's homes, employed in the hotel industry. And yet, is anybody even listening to the plight of property owners when they have increased the rental tax? When it comes to overtaxing Zambians, nobody speaks about it. Because Zambians must be subjected to paying heavy tax.
But some of these miners are Zambians.
Can you imagine a person owning a small house in Kanyama? They put their house on rent. They have to pay 16% VAT on that house, and they have to pay 16% rental tax. And yet this miner is allowed to exploit your mineral resources, which are a national endowment, unlike this house of a person who struggled to build it. You are overtaxing that rent person and leaving this miner. Even if it's a Zambian or not, it is not right that they can extract our minerals and export them without any revenue coming to the country. That is not right.
You've attributed the economic challenges and the high cost of living that the country is experiencing so far in this interview to taxation, but you've also talked about government policies towards the mining sector. But there's also an argument that government has advanced, and it's that the last 2 years, the last year, has not been easy for the country. The country experienced one of its worst droughts with significant evidence, and this has impacted generation of electricity, a major driver of economic growth being energy. Shouldn't this also be brought into the picture, that there is an unusual occurrence here that has left the economy crippled due to the low production of electricity?
Had the government been thinking the way you're thinking, they would have been saying things different from how you're saying them and asking different questions. Because the issue is knowing that they have this natural disaster, the drought, which has impacted negatively, not only on government revenue, but negatively, especially on the lives of people. What could the government have done? They would not have been allowing the productive sector, the mining sector, to be doing what they were doing. They would have ensured that they are going to earn revenue from there to subsidize the suffering masses, the people who have lost their livelihood because of the drought. But what do we see? They are ignoring these people who have been facing the calamities of the natural drought and allowing the miners to exploit the mineral resources without any revenue going into the country, without any support to those vulnerable people. That is the problem we have. And lest people are misled, this is not the first time that Zambia has faced a drought. No, Zambia has faced several droughts in the past. Okay? But we've managed. We were resilient enough. We didn't have the calamity of being the 6th poorest country in the world. And talking of which, the report has also shown that the iniquity in Zambia is extremely high. Okay? Very few people, the mine owners, are the ones who have the money. The majority of Zambians are living on less than $2 a day. But what is even worse, my dear friend, is that we were made to vote. 2.8 million people were made to vote for a government that promised us that no matter what happens, when you vote for us, we already have pledges, $25 billion. My friends have already pledged $25 billion. When you vote for me, $25 billion will come into the economy. When you vote for me at 10 o'clock, at 14 hours, the dollar will be 10 kwacha to the dollar. When you vote for me, minimum prices will go down to 50 kwacha. Huh? This is the basis on which they were elected. For them to turn around 1 year along the line and say, because of this drought, we cannot deliver. No, that is immoral.
What do you think about the UPND members of parliament and some members of the Patriotic Front, in fact, and some independent members of parliament walking away just last week when Honorable Mutotwe Kafuaya was moving a motion to debate the cost of living? They say that this was inconsequential, but they also did not want to be limited by a short time to debate this issue, and would have much appreciated a different way in which it was presented before Parliament, so that they have enough time to explain to the citizens. Well, what is your assessment of this?
The practice of walking out of Parliament is an acceptable practice in all Commonwealth parliaments. However, the walkout is always only when the presiding officer is the one who is in the wrong. That's when walkout makes sense. Not as a result of a matter that is being debated. No. The PF members of Parliament walked out of Parliament on 4 occasions during this Parliament. And if you look at Hansard, it will show you that every single time when they walked out, they were protesting against the decision of the presiding officer, not against government. No. Even when UPND was in opposition, they walked out on several occasions when they found that the presiding officer was not paying attention to their plight. It is the very first time in the history of the Zambian parliament that cabinet ministers and members of the ruling party walk out of parliament, not because of the decision of the presiding officer, but because of a debate, because of a motion. That's dereliction of duty. And I and others who think like me are waiting to see what the presiding officers will do to those members of parliament who walked out of parliament and by so doing curtailed a debate. Because remember, the constitution provides functions of parliament. One of the functions is to appropriate funds for the development of the country. The constitution does not say that the appropriation of funds shall be following a motion presented by government. No, it just says appropriation of funds, meaning that a private member can raise a motion for debate, and through that motion that is presented by a private member, the government can then appropriate funds. So what they did that day was dereliction of duty, and it's supposed to be punished.
But they argue that, not just their argument, it is in fact one of their rights. I mean, I know that you argue that history has shown that it is normally against the presiding officer, but it's not the only time that they can walk out. They can walk out as them exercising their democratic rights. So do you think that's enough? You could disagree with them, but do you think that's enough reason for them to face punitive action?
They don't have a right to walk out of parliament on a motion. No. They don't have that right. They have a right to protest against a decision of the presiding officer, yes. But they have no right to walk out of parliament against a motion that has been approved by parliament. No, they have no right. They have no right.
Finally, in our interview today, still talking about Parliament, the National Assembly, the leadership of the National Assembly had instructed the Minister of Health to issue a statement on the health of former President Edgar Lungu and on former Minister of Finance, who is also leader of the FDD, Edith Nawakwi. The minister came back and issued a statement and said that the two leaders deserve their right to privacy, and therefore there was no need to have such a disclosure. Are you happy that the minister took such a decision, and have you considered it an objective decision that you applaud?
There is nothing to be happy about. First of all, even just the point of order was absurd. It was wrong. And for the presiding officer to even instruct the minister to come to Parliament and come and discuss the health status of an individual is wrong. Totally wrong. And on that occasion, had cabinet ministers stood up to say, no, we will not allow that point of order, they would have been right, because that's a wrong decision of the presiding officer. Even your access to information law provides that private matters of such nature cannot be brought to the public without the consent of the affected person. So there's nothing to be happy about. There's everything to be sad about. That we can have members of parliament who don't understand the basics about privacy. It's sad to see that we have a presiding officer who can gloss over such important private matters and say, yes, I'm directing you. There's nothing to be happy about. So whether Muchima went there and said whatever he said is not an issue. For me, it is sad that we have a member of parliament who doesn't understand the virtue and the doctrine of privacy. And we have a presiding officer who also equally doesn't understand. That is what makes me sad. Then who is governing us? Are we being governed by people who know what it means to govern? No, we're turning ourselves into a laughingstock. Just before that, you remember what was happening? We heard the minister saying, whoever questions the health of the president. Now, see the difference? Head of state, president, state property, paid for, fed every single day by the state. When people are asking, we don't see our president, what is his state of health? What is his state of being? What were we told? Stop it. It's treason. It's treason to question the health of a head of state? No. It is not allowed to question the health of a private person in an institution such as Parliament. But there is everything right for the Zambians to ask about the health of their president. They have every right. You saw what happened with the Levi Mwanawasa. You saw what happened with Michael Sata. It was made public because they were holding public office. They are property for the period for which they are president. They are property of Zambia. But Edith Nawakwi, being a president of a political party, is not public property. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, being former president, is not public property. Especially that, as you are well aware, he is not even receiving the benefits of office of former president.
Well, it looks like government agrees with you based on the minister's statement. They seem to agree with you that those are private citizens.
I'm drawing parallels, sir. I'm drawing parallels. When you question the health of President Hakainde, who is incumbent, who is being fed by the state, it's treason. But a member of parliament can be allowed to go and ask parliament, please, can you bring us the record of the health of Nawak?
And government disagrees with that.
And parliament agrees.
No. The government did not
Parliament agreed.
But the minister...
No, I'm saying parliament. I didn't say minister.
But the minister is part of the cabinet.
I didn't say minister.
The minister is part of the cabinet of President Hakainde.
I'm saying parliament, sir. I didn't say cabinet. Don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say cabinet agreed. I said parliament agreed. And I also answered you earlier that the position taken by government over the matter does not make me any happy at all. It is not as though they were doing something that is extraordinary. No, they were doing the obvious. You cannot discuss the health of a private person in parliament. Should I be happy that they came to say that? It's too obvious. It doesn't require any accolades from me, no. But what makes me sad is that the institution of parliament can be used to even raise the question and for the presiding officer to even instruct. That is what makes me sad. I hope I've answered the question, sir. I have not said cabinet approved. No, I said parliament approved. And by the way, talking about parliament, I hear people now even getting scared just to talk about what is happening in Parliament. Why? In a democracy such as ours. Why? The Constitution of the Republic of Zambia in Part 6 says very clearly, Article 88, it states very clearly that members of the public are at liberty to comment on decisions, on statements, and any matters that are in Parliament. So people can talk and say that presiding officer was wrong. They must say it openly. They must not fear reprimand. They must not fear that, no, the police will come and arrest you like they arrested Lubinda. No. The Constitution provides that citizens can comment on decisions made in Parliament. And that decision that was made, that the minister must come and discuss the health status of President Nawakwe and President Edgar Lungu, is wrong.
Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of This Day.
Thank you very, very much for having me, and I look forward to you inviting me so that we can spend time talking about the country and talking about the economy and where we're going, especially towards 2026 elections, and not spending time on the coup. That coup was a failed coup, and it belongs to the archives. The PF still continues, and the PF shall have a candidate in 2026.
As much as you are probably tired of talking about this, I think it is in the public interest, and at least we've talked about it today.
The public know everything about it, that it was a failed coup d'etat.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of This
Very nice having me on your program.
Absolutely.
Thank you.